Well, hello everyone, all you geeks and ghouls. Welcome to the Halloween episode of Struggle Session. We had to do it. We had to talk some horror, and I got my homie, filmmaker, writer, director of Miss Me Yet, Failed State, award-winning films, and a short film we're going to talk about today, The Confection, starring Alex Patak and Simone Norman. All that good stuff, but we're going to talk tons and tons of horror. Christopher, welcome to the show. Thanks so much for coming back.
Thank you for having me. Always love doing this, and now it's time to talk about little scary things.
Yes, spooky season, and I have to be honest, I haven't watched a ton of horror lately. I feel like I'm getting into it. It's taking a while to get in the spooky season mood. I think in large part because the world itself so scary. You don't need a horror movie to get freaked out. You can just turn on anything anywhere.
Yeah, I think I did better last year. I had a moment where my wife was like, "We should do that every day. Just watch a horror movie." I'm super excited, and we just did not do that this year. But I think back last year we were watching we did a run of all the Saw movies, and I told her the other day I was like, I really don't remember what happened in all of those individual ones. Maybe it's whatever that we didn't watch them. I wouldn't remember them anyway. But
Yeah,
yeah.
I have only seen maybe 2 or 3 of the Saw films. I never really got into it because it's just that's not really my type of horror. And it was like, I think in retrospect, the Saw series looks a lot better, but it never really grabbed hold of me. I did watch the one with Chris Rock that was like really super serious. That was
Yeah.
kind of interesting, even though they were like they like blew up the police station in that one, I believe, which was also obviously awesome. But yeah, I never really got hooked into Saw, but I know some people just live and die about that series.
Yeah. The Chris Rock one was really interesting because we had watched that last year, missed it when it came out. But it's like, I believe his Fargo season was after that. And knowing that, watching I think it's called Spiral, um, it really is just like, oh, this is like a dry run for him to do Fargo. Like he's kind of proving himself like, hey, I can do this. I can be the former comedy guy in a serious role. But they are, like I said, I don't really remember them like individually, but they are quite fun. I always have a thing of like watching. There's 10 movies in this series. I want to watch them. Like I probably miss it. We watched, God, you know what? We watched Twilight series earlier this year, which my
Okay.
wife was not happy about, but I was like, I just got to know what they were like. I need to see it. Um,
It's so funny. One of my not a great regret, but they were filming, I think maybe the third or fourth Twilight in my hometown in Baton Rouge when Louisiana had all those tax credits and they shot a ton of movies in the area. Like the Twilight people were hanging out and like doing karaoke and hanging out downtown. And one night I was supposed to go, but I was like, I'm tired. And that's when all the Twilight people came out and did karaoke.
you could have met Kristen Stewart,
I could
could
have
have
met
met
Kristen Stewart.
Pattinson.
I could have met Pattinson. I didn't know they were cool. Like, I think in general, they weren't really popular at the time. I don't know if kids know, like, it took them 10 years of hard work and rebranding to become like these serious actors or even movie stars. Now it's kind of interesting. Are the Twilight films horror films? I have only barely seen them, but I would think of a 400-year-old vampire being in love with a 16-year-old girl. That's horrific enough, but I wasn't sure about the actual horror elements in the
Yeah.
series.
Yeah, there's not many. Now that you mention it, I think it might be the second one or the third one where there are a few scenes of like a predatory nature, like it's like a bad vampire is in take place in Seattle or something, like in the city and kind of prowling. And those sequences are more horror. Otherwise, it's like paperback fantasy romance kind of thing. And it's interesting too, looking back, because I do remember at the time hearing the movies are terrible. Kristen Stewart, like the worst actor ever. Pattinson's so bad, and they're actually like quite good. As you said, it took them a while to like be cool or whatever. They're working with art house filmmakers, and it's like okay, they got better as they went on, but They are good in those movies. I'm not saying watch them. I'm just saying that they are like very talented even from then, and it's like they're really doing the best they can with, sorry to Twilight heads out there, but it's not the best material. Like, what do you? I don't know. It's like Halle Berry. Do we like Halle Berry? She got a bunch of shit for that X-Men line, but it's like, what are you supposed to do with that line? Like,
Yes. What could she
you know?
possibly do? Joss Whedon wrote that, by the way. Everybody just have to point that out.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That should be the
All right.
takeaway from now on.
All right. So, horror, you should not watch the Twilight series, but what movie series should people watch?
Hmm. I didn't watch the whole thing, but I did watch a lot of Hellraiser maybe 2 years
Hellraiser.
ago. Yeah, very, very good.
Hellraiser, I 110% agree. I think actually every Hellraiser is good. I think just even the one with the fake pinhead is a really earnest attempt at making a decent Hellraiser movie with an extremely low budget. No offense to Doug Bradley, all respect to him, but even that movie is like part of the narrative is that there is a fake pinhead in the narrative of the movie. So like they could have, done it as this is not the original pinhead. Like they put a lot of thought into the film, and it actually is pretty scary, pretty creepy. It's an interesting film. But of course, my favorite is the second one, Hellraiser 2, Leviathan. And I've talked about it on the show many times before, but the vision of hell in that film is just something I think about constantly. It's just magnificent and haunting and beautiful and terrifying. And also, as far as these things go, seems somewhat realistic.
Yeah. Yeah, that's funny. I did stop. I watched four and then I watched the Hulu one. And it's only been recently where I was like, why did I stop? Why didn't I just keep going? It's like
You
at
gotta
least an
keep going.
interesting. Yeah, I think I might. I think I might rewatch the first four and then just keep going.
Wait a minute.
But I
And
really,
four the one in space?
yes.
Oh, yes. That's a good one. I really like that one.
Yeah. I think that's funny too. That's with Adam Scott because it goes through different time periods. And I remember being like, I think it came out early 90s. It's like, that's so funny. They got this guy who looks exactly like Adam Scott. And I think the lesson is if it looks like Adam Scott, it probably is.
That is actually a thing. If you go back and watch a lot of stuff, you see a lot of Scott, and he's just Adam Scott in this movie. It's so strange, and that was actually his first major film role. So has he done a lot of horror since? He's got the chops, I think. To be a little scream queen, a scream king, maybe.
Yeah. I kind of think he did, although I'm not remembering. Like, I want to say during the period of like Halloween H2O and stuff, I feel like he was in one of those kinds of
He
things.
was in Piranha 3D.
Okay. So it's a little, that's more comedic, isn't it? The piranha.
Yes, yes. Oh, he was in The Monkey too.
That's right. He was in the monkey. Segue to the monkey, which I don't have a lot to say about. Did you like the monkey?
I watched just a little bit of it. My partner watched it. They liked it. I dipped in and out of it. It seemed the premise was a little silly to me. But I'm happy. I want to hear your thoughts. Maybe I'll go back and check it out.
No.
Not the
My
premise, but
thoughts.
the outcome. The outcome. I actually liked the premise, but the where it went, it didn't seem my cup of tea. But I'm willing to hear.
Yeah. No, I have the same. You probably watch more than me. So I saw trailers for it, and it seemed a little. I didn't read the story, but it seemed like a little ridiculous. And the trailers, from what I remember, seemed very serious. And I was like, come on, like you got to be humorous about this. And then I watched it 2 minutes in, and I was just like, okay, they're not serious about this, but this is not what I was thinking. Like when I thought maybe it needed a more like horror comedic tone, I was like, no, not like this. This is I'm like begging to leave here. And then Adam Scott shows up, and I was like, no, uh, I gotta bail, and I bailed. I couldn't tolerate it. So
All right,
no,
let's
I don't
talk.
recommend it.
Don't recommend it. All right, I want to talk about one modern horror film that came out this year that people loved and was very popular, made a lot of money, but I was not as excited as everyone else about. Weapons, you know, the trailer for it, beautiful. Was very, very, very excited for it. Really happy to get into it. But watching the film itself just felt, I don't know, it felt like the theme was like that line from WandaVision, what is grief if not love persevering? Which is a nice sentiment and a nice message, but it didn't feel like a great foundation for a really scary horror movie. Even though it has some good parts and good elements, I'm not saying it's a bad movie, and I think people should watch it. Ultimately, it left me even like as kind of like Barbarian did. It's like these are well crafted, well thought out popular movies. They're clearly touching a lot of people, but they just don't quite get me.
Hmm. Yeah. No, I was also pretty Luke on that movie, and I saw it maybe a week and a half ago. A very intriguing premise, and I did like Barbarian, like not so much. I guess this is his thing. He just chops stuff up narratively. So Barbarian, I was less excited about for the last third or something, but it did
Yeah,
pull me
yeah. I think
along.
the first 2/3, I like it. It was. I remember sitting in the theater and thinking, like, "Wow, this is a really gripping film. Like, this is what films should be. Like, this is just pulling me along." But like, when you get to that last third, it's just that, like, it just felt disjointed, disconnected. It just didn't fit like the crescendo of a really great horror film should fit.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah. Like Barbarian was pretty gripping, like mysteries. Like I don't know. There's people show up. Is this guy the bad guy? Is he going to do something wrong? And then it kind of shifts. Justin Long playing the dickhead character, and it's like, oh, this is like funny. This is really funny. What is he doing? And then it kind of, it's not bad, but it's not as exciting, and it kind of goes through more of the motions, more of a formula in that last bit. Weapons did a thing where it had the gripping premise, but it's chopped up so much that you're not even like taken along in the way that you were for Barbarian. It's like instantly like you pull out and then you go back and you pull out, you go back, and it really kills momentum.
Yeah, it really loses momentum because, like I said, it's an amazing premise, and I imagine so much cool shit happening throughout the movie, so much terrifying shit. I mean, ultimately, not to spoil it somewhat, but it's called Weapons. You don't actually get to see the weapons used until the very, very end. And that was just kind of disappointing.
Hmm. Yeah, I do like that set piece, if you want to call it that, and if it could remain like vague. I did like that last little bit, but yeah, it's too much kind of in and out shifting perspectives. And it shifts perspectives in a way that, I don't know, again, really does kill momentum, but I'm not really sure you're getting much out of that like, thematically. Like it really is like kind of pulling its punches.
Yeah,
It's
it
a
was
shame.
so I was very shocked by who the main POV character was when the movie started. It was like if this is a movie about missing children, you probably want to focus more on like the ones directly impacted. It immediately gave me a little bit of a distance from it. Obviously, she was impacted because she's their teacher, but like the parents, they'd be going wild. Like I think that could have been a little bit more focused, and it's a very funny movie too. It is mostly, I think, kind of a comedy. So like you have this great horrific premise, but then you're also kind of making a horror comedy. It doesn't really, work together. Like those two things can't build off one another as much as you would like.
Yeah. Also, like I like Eddington. It doesn't help that they're so close to one another. Even like the certain visuals that it attempts, like the cell phone, shooting with cell phone, like people glued to their phones. Like there's a lot of overlap between the two, and I hate to do that, but I can't help but like compare them and just be like, I got more out of this movie, which I don't love, but I did like that movie, Eddington.
One thing I actually think it should have done more of is been more like a horror movie, especially when Joaquin Phoenix's character has COVID and is having this feverish, murder spree. Oh, it could have been a little bit more like a horror movie. Instead, it felt more like, I don't know, like I'm trying to think, not Coen Brothers, maybe something even a little lighter style of kind of B movie violence, kind of comedic violence. When it could have been like really, terrifying and scary. I would like to see just a little bit more of that in that movie.
Yeah.
All
Yeah, I
right.
could see that. I would agree.
But let's talk about some classics, some unrepentantly terrifying films. I'm so glad you sent me a list of some of your favorite flicks, and I was so glad to see these two films on the list. The Exorcist, 1973 by William Friedkin, and The Exorcist 3 by William Peter Blatty, 1990. The Blatty cut, I'm sure you mean. So let's talk about these movies and let's talk about them in context too. Because The Exorcist, at least, is like, it's more than a movie. It was more than a movie. It was like a cultural touchstone for people. Like, even if you never watched The Exorcist, you knew so much of it because it would be referenced in other things, even in comedy over the years. So The Exorcist was just this, even when the book was massive, the film was massive.
Yeah, I mean, it's been over 10 years since I've seen it, but it stayed with me. I missed it during my adolescence. I didn't watch it, but it was very much parodied. Probably saw it in like Animaniacs or something like that. You couldn't
Yes.
avoid it. So it's one of those things where you get to your 20s and you're like, this movie can't surprise me. And it did. It was very, very incredible. Everything before the actual where the possession really goes full throttle. It's like this kind of measured, very slow, tense, like weird drama. And I really took to that. Like I remember they're bringing, I forget the girl's name, but they're bringing her and they're doing all these like very alienating science experiments. And I remember like they're spending so much time on that, which is not what I expected to see in that movie. And I remember just being like, oh, this is going way further than I ever thought. And this is also having kind of cinema grammar from growing up and even horror cinema grammar, like kind of like cut to the chase or whatever. But we are slowly building up to this thing where they can't figure out what's wrong with her, what's going on. And it turns out to be this greater evil. But at first, we see all these weird tests, and it's very nerve wracking to see it. Like anybody in those kind of machines, but a kid and like not knowing what to do to help the kid. And that is a really unique way that they built the dread up until this. Like, it's very parodied. Like you see it like almost cartoonishly, all of the Exorcist sequences. But without all that stuff before, that really wouldn't work. It would feel cartoonish. But by the time you get to it, like you do kind of take it seriously. And that was really
Yeah, like
great.
that angiography scene that you mentioned when she's in this weird machine and her like blood is being sucked out and it's just horrific. And it's real world horror that really grounds this obviously sort of ridiculous premise of demonic possession. This It's so grounded and that they take the horror when they get to it. They don't pull any punches, I'm sure, as most people know. The spinning head, the walking down the stairs backwards, the vomiting, like so much of it's such a horrific movie when it gets to the horror, even though it's so grounded beforehand. That's why it works. I remember I would watch it on a very heavily edited version of it, and my brother would always tease me like, "Man, you scared of that one? You don't even know what the real one's like." And I was like, when I did get to watch the unedited one, I was like, "Oh my God." I mean, the crucifix scene, it was more terrifying than I could have anticipated, even though like I knew it was coming. I heard the parody, but actually seeing it, like it was just something else. And I really liked that. It was such a grounded, really, high quality 70s movie, regardless of the genre, but the horror element, it was not pulled back at all. It went as far as they probably could have at the time.
Yeah. And it's funny, it took me, I want to say, not 10 more years, maybe 10 more years to even attempt like Exorcist 3, because I was kind of building up a bit that this one is actually good. I think for long time horror franchises, like the first one's good, then they get worse, blah, blah, blah. But seeing the third one, I was just like, I think this is supposed to be good. This one, like, I'm convincing my wife to watch it with me. I was like, I think this one's supposed to be good. It's supposed to be weird, maybe. Like, let's watch it. And I was like completely blown away, like how much of a weirdo movie that is. You got Fabio, got
Patrick Ewing as the Angel of Death.
Yeah, just like so many weird little things, and then so many like very amazing, just very unique filmmaking. I remember even like this weird sense of dread when there's just an establishing shot, like what you would think of as an establishing shot of the house, like the house where the characters are living in, and then just like whispering underneath of was that George C. Scott in it?
Yes, George C. Scott is the is detect as Lieutenant Kinderman in a powerhouse role, amazing classic actor, and he just gives this film such gravitas. Where again, the this could be a really cheap B, horror movie. It really could be, because they're in the 90s. This came out in 1990, right? And the premise is basically mixing kind of like the serial killer genre with the Exorcist genre, kind of combining those two. In a lot of ways, you can look at it as a kind of formulaic procedural serial killer movie, except for the how it's filmed and the acting performances and just how weird it is on top of everything else. Like if you like Silence of the Lambs, you'll probably also like this, but it also is like a little bit stranger. And it came out years, before it. It's a really excellent film, and it took a while for Blatty's preferred cut to come out. So, but even before the Snyder cut, you had the Blatty cut fight for Exorcist 3, and Blatty, of course, he wrote the original book, and he really put his foot in this sequel. Like Exorcist 3, it's just an excellent film, I think, and a really, really great horror film, and a really scary one, which is famous for having one of the scariest scenes in all of horror, bar none. I think no one disagrees when they watch this film. I don't even have to say, if you have not seen this movie, you're going to know the scene that I'm talking about, and it's going to scare the shit out of you.
Yeah. The cinematic language is so crazy in that movie. To know it's like a big franchise movie in the 90s without even knowing what kind of like Blatty is like kind of like a religious weirdo. Without even knowing that, like you watch it and you know something different is going on. And it even took me a while to go after was it John Borman, the second Exorcist, which I also like. Only seen it in the last few years, but also it's different. It's a little more standard in terms of what it's about. I mean, I guess it comparison to Exorcist 3. There's some amazing shots in that, some like really incredible things. And man, I would recommend the first three.
Yeah,
Go
and
for it if you haven't.
I know the Brad Dourif fans are yelling at us through the radio. His performance in this film is excellent and very, very good as the Gemini Killer. It's just a wonderful movie. The Exorcist 3, I cannot recommend it enough, but you can watch all three. We got a few days left of Halloween, and spooky season that lasts all the way up till Christmas, even a little bit later. So make sure to put the Exorcist ones on your uh calendar. Did watch the most recent one, which came out, I think, last year. And I think Paramount paid like hundreds of millions of dollars for the rights to the Exorcist series for whatever reason, like more money than the Exorcist films have like made. They paid more money for it, and they put out one, I think last year, which just was kind of nothing. Like it wasn't really that scary, wasn't really that interesting. It's like, why pay? Obviously it was made for like a streaming service. It was not made to be shown in theaters, even though they paid all this money for it.
Yeah. Yeah, I kind of forgot they did that until you just brought it up. That's David Gordon
Yeah,
Green.
The Exorcist Believer is what Jason. It was produced by Blumhouse, but yeah,
Yeah, it had twins being possessed. That was the one.
yes.
Yeah, that wasn't great. Yeah, that one. I guess this is a string of like David Gordon Green taking on horror movies and just I don't know, no offense, man. Not pulling it. You can see it's kind of like a aliens dollar sign kind of thing where it's like we're gonna do two people this time. Yeah, it didn't work, and it was kind of one of those things where I remember even just like flaws in the script. You have the big exorcist scene, and then there's like a female priest who wants to help, but she's like, I can't help, goes and leaves, and then has a moment where she's like, I should go back, and then immediately dies, which is one of those things. I think as horror fans, you have the weird suspension of disbelief, but I think it has to be fun. It has to like make sense to a certain degree. If something looks good and or it is fun, you're safe. But that script had a lot of very weird things. Like, why would she leave and then come back only for them to just die? Like, it feels like a weird rug pull. And I don't know. Sometimes it's funny to think like, what will I accept in a horror versus what won't I accept?
All right.
But I think he blew it.
All right. Well, let's talk something fun that was on your list. Deep Red by Dario Argento, 1975. If your psychic abilities allow you to read the thoughts of people, and one of those people is a serial killer, don't blurt it out when they're in the room with you. That's just the first tip. But this is a fun movie. Giallo is the genre. The Italian sexy slashy horror film Argento is a master of. I hadn't seen Deep Red before. I had seen. I was a big fan of Tenebrae, and Suspiria is one of my favorite films of all time. But Deep Red is a fun one too.
That was my first film of his of that genre. I saw it super young, and probably the cinematography is what got me. I don't know if the cuts are different now, but there was a cut that you had to watch was like, okay, well, there is like the dubbing is missing, so a lot of scenes are like dubbed in English or they're in Italian, and it kind of like goes in between, which is a really strange way to watch movie. But I was in the right place, in the right mind to do that, where it's like everything was like interesting to me. But it was like the combination of cinematography, a lot of really amazing tracking shots, a lot of like kind of uh I mean vibrant colors like deep red, bright red, blood, the Goblin soundtrack. I had not seen anything like that. Nobody's really doing it like that. And that's what it was. It was just such an anomaly to what I thought horror could be. And it really opened up things, what could be.
I really am a huge fan of Argento, but I have to say that there was a trend on film Twitter about what director has the greatest gap between good and bad films. Argento is like easily my answer because I think he's made some of the greatest horror films of all time. But when you get to a film like I believe it's not called The Three Sisters, but it's the last in the Three Sisters trilogy. There's a scene where it's a woman under psychic possession by a witch throws her baby off a bridge. Obviously, they're not throwing a real baby. They throw a plastic baby, but as the baby is going down, it hits and the plastic arm breaks off. And you see the plastic arm fly off the plastic baby in the theatrical cut, released cut of this Dario Argento film. So I was pretty disappointed in that one.
Yeah. What year was that? Do you know?
It was in, let me see, let me look it up. Certain it was after 2000.
One of
Let me
those.
pull it up. Mother of Tears, 2007.
Yeah, it's pretty notorious.
Yeah.
His later run is so bad. I haven't touched it. There was like the Dracula one, and a friend of mine reviewed it at the time, and I think it's that one where it was like, oh, Dracula can also turn into a mantis. I don't know if it's that, but that did sound interesting to me, and I was like, wait a second, like, do I have to watch this? He's like, do not watch this. But I still have
You
that in the
know,
back of my head.
it's so funny because his next film after Mother of Tears is Giallo, which is like a tribute to all Giallo movies, starring Adrian Brody, who was like hot at the time. It's also terrible, sadly enough. But let's talk about some more classics. This year, the biggest horror film I think was probably Sinners. And I want to talk a little bit about in a future episode about all the black vampire movies, but you had something on your list, one of the most interesting films that exists, Ganja and Hess. This is an amazing, unique vampire movie that doesn't look or feel like any other film I think I've ever seen. Just an amazing, like I didn't know movies could look and feel like this until I saw it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like more or less most of stuff on my list, which you could see at Split Tooth Media. But that was a big one where I wasn't even ready. I think you had heard a lot about that movie coming out. I was like, oh, Ganja and Hess is like a really good, and it's like very one of the few black filmmakers who was like able to get stuff out of there, and it was like maybe a little harder to watch at the time. We were talking about Exorcist 3 being weird. Nothing will prepare you for like the strange journey that movie takes you on. I mean, like it's so beautiful. The way it kind of like the storytelling is so strange, and never in my life will I forget the end credit scene. Why it chooses to do that, and if anyone hasn't seen it, they will never know what I'm talking about. They will never be able to guess like the way the movie ends. It is just like, saying there's nothing like it is almost like underserving it. There's really isn't.
Yeah,
I don't know if and is it true that like Spike Lee movie is kind of a remake of it? Like he ended up remaking that in a way?
it's called the Sweet Blood of Jesus,
Hmm.
which I hadn't seen, hadn't heard a lot about. I want to check it out now just to compare it because, I mean, Ganja has that. If there's one movie you gotta add to your list, it's that one. It's terrifying. It's horrific. It's beautiful. It's haunting. It's a true classic.
Yeah, I don't know if you call it a romance, but it's a strange relationship movie while also being a horror movie, while also being a just an experimental art house movie.
Yes.
Don't let that scare you away, though.
Yeah,
It's really
still
remarkable.
accessible, but experimental, but accessible because it is in still in like as far as vampire films and their conception of vampirism, it's really cool.
Yeah, and I haven't seen the Spike Lee one. Might be a good idea to watch that before, as a little
Yes,
getting in. I have seen like parts of it, and it is a good looking film, but I can't say any more than that.
yeah. So one film that people have been talking about recently, I'm so happy because I've been spreading the word about this for years. Cure, Kiyoshi Kurosawa's 1997 serial killer classic, social contagion classic. I see lots of people talking about it. I never thought there would come a day where when people are talking about Kurosawa, they're talking about Kiyoshi instead of Akira. Don't sleep on Akira, but still, Cure, that's one of my all time, probably my favorite horror film of all time. I think it's just superb. I think it's one of the greatest films of all time. I did an episode on it a while back, but the premise is that there's this and it feels and it's set in Japan in Tokyo, and there's this um kind of this, I don't know, disease, would you call it? Social pathogen, mind virus going around pushing people to kill and commit these horrific acts that are inexplicable, that seem to come from nowhere.
Mm. I think the through line between in this conversation, like weapons to cure, is not like that thin because something that cure does is like there's kind of an answer, but there's not really an answer as to like what's going on and who is responsible. And the way you just described it is kind of what I think some people were expecting out of weapons. And
Yes.
I'm sorry, it doesn't really do that in the end. But anyway, I don't know. I just wanted to connect those thoughts. But so when I was in film school, I hadn't seen anything, and it was pretty big 4 years for me. So I discovered Tarkovsky, and I was getting into art film. And I was like, oh my God, I didn't know you could do these kinds of things with film. I didn't know like this is what could happen. And then eventually I saw Cure, and that was my first Kiyoshi, and it did remind me a lot of Tarkovsky in that kind of art house cinema, of slow cinema kind of way. And I don't. It's been a while since I've seen it. Maybe it's not like Tarkovsky. I have no idea, but that was like generally what I got from it. And there was just a lot of. It's such an evocative film, and it's very mysterious. There's a lot of dread. There's very little answers, but there is still the narrative momentum of it being a mystery and trying to solve it, but things not really adding up. And, you know, it's like, it's interesting the movie is called Cure because they're not really getting to the cure of things. Like somebody gets arrested, spoiler, and that's not a bad thing. It probably changes the stuff, but it's not the cure. It's not, there is something going on in a mass way that cannot be cured just by you know, arresting like one guy. There is something going on in our heads and our social conditions that isn't going to change just by arresting one guy. And you can get
Yeah.
so much out of this movie, but even just to like let it take you in, it's just a remarkable experience.
To compare it to another recent movie, Long Legs. Now, a lot of people were actually making this comparison between Cure and Long Legs, not so favorably to Long Legs. I thought it was a decent movie. I thought it was all right, and it was one that also kind of hooked me early on. I haven't thought about it since I watched it, though. Honestly, it was fine. I'm glad a lot of people loved it. I hope they check out The Exorcist 3 and Cure as well, because I think if you like Long Legs, you really really love those. Even some people hadn't seen Silence of the Lambs and were like, oh, "What's this? If I like Long Legs, you'll probably like Silence of the Lambs too."
Whoa. Wow. Yeah, people are younger than us. It's so crazy. But yeah, I did see Long Legs. I'm not like that's probably my favorite Oz Perkins movie. Maybe not. Maybe I like the first one. What is the thing in the house or something? Pretty little thing in the house. He doesn't really do it for me, but I do remember having a moment watching that film of saying like this does look good. This does feel good, but I'm at a remove. Why? Like why is stuff not sticking? You said you couldn't even remember it. Agree mostly. And that's one of those things too where like I think you have such a high concept script that you're just like okay, by the end you're like things aren't making sense. And Weapons, is that similar too where like there are plans being made and you're just like okay like if this person did this how did they know this was going to happen or and I remember that happening a lot in Long Legs of it just being like someone's invited to a birthday party and they had to get them there but it's like but why did they invite her like wasn't there a more plausible way to do this that doesn't like completely break up and you don't get stuff in Cure like that it's very much like
No.
here's a detective he's investigating this thing then this thing happens and it's a good like comparison, like how you learn how to write like a compelling script, or it's just like take all this stuff out. It doesn't make any sense. It's implausible, or like learn what I don't know. Now we're talking about the whole like suspension of disbelief and if people care. And I probably wouldn't have cared if I was more in tune with Long Legs, but it felt like we're gonna throw Nicolas Cage in there. He's gonna do things that are overtly weird, and that really broke me. Where it's like he's sticking his tongue out and stuff. I also don't want to feel that someone's trying too hard. It's like, again, that movie looked good, so you don't really have to try that hard with me. It's like, oh, no, you're on the right path. You don't need to put in like a forced Nicolas Cage performance. But that's kind of what I felt like that. No offense to people who liked it, it's just, I'm a hard ass. What can you do?
Yeah.
It's my cross
But
to bear.
let's talk about a film that I think some people might think contradicts a lot of what we're saying about these last films. But like you said, if it actually gets you, then it can break some of these rules. Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
Mm.
A movie that took me a while to fall in love with, but I'm starting to see why people who love this movie think it's literally the greatest film of all time.
hmm Yeah, that's one of those interesting, like it's kind of minimalist, which I guess kind of goes with what I was just saying about Cure, where you have a really good, tight script. That doesn't mean when you film it, there's not kind of diversions you take or whatever. Like, Texas Chainsaw Massacre, do you necessarily need like all this time spent in a van with teens of the time kind of whatever like not trained performers kind of doing their thing and the answer is yes but you would maybe point to that and be like oh couldn't you get rid of that or whatever that would be the obvious gripe but no you can't and it's a very kind of maybe like lean kind of film that knows exactly what it's doing and there's a few hints like throughout and that would be like the way the story is portrayed which is not something I hear in a lot of talks about cinema. It's like you can tell any story, but it's how you tell the story. And any other film of that time that is just trying to make anything or whatever, it wouldn't have kind of the care put into framing composition in that thing. And one of the most intriguing things that I've seen come out of that movie, which I still see people talk about, is like there's a tracking shot of a woman going to the house, like wearing skimpy stuff, like her ass is in the frame very prominently so like you get all that stuff but it's this very interesting what do you call it like an angle up from the ground looking up oh I forget what it's called but It's a tracking thing. It's very, very stunning, and you do see it making the rounds on Twitter, film Twitter, or like I'm sure Instagram, stuff like that. And if this was just like a garish, afterthought of a movie, you wouldn't have stuff like that and forget like
Yeah.
Poltergeist and what we know from Hooper. But yeah, there is so much care put into this very disgusting, raw movie that you wouldn't know just by talking about or just as like what's so good about that. But even the way it ends, like it's very like the killer survives and we just like see this very strange being in the middle of a road swinging around a chainsaw. There's nothing more visceral than that, and it really leaves you with like an amazing kind of like unsettling feeling.
Yeah, and compare that to Longlegs, which it's in some ways doing the same things to the same level, but just doesn't work as well. That character doesn't work as well as, Leatherface.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah, and I think that's like, I don't know. That is probably putting too much on. Oh, we got Nicolas Cage. Like he's got to do something weird, right? And it's really straining stuff versus here is this weird family and they're going to do weird stuff, but we're also just going to have you sit and watch them eat dinner at the dinner table and a lot of very uncomfortable things. It's not Nicolas Cage kind of like sticking his tongue out and saying "Hail Satan" and stuff like that. I don't know. It's so much more like organic, and it pulls back. It's like we don't need the kind of bravura performance. Like if you do less, it'll say a lot more. And I think that's the difference between those two movies. Even talking about the script of Longlegs, where they have all these rules. It's like you're going to a birthday party, right? You're going to do this, and then you'll do this, and then the mom is involved too. And it's kind of a lot to. It's not that I couldn't keep up with it, but you're losing so much by putting so much emphasis on this stuff that doesn't really work for me.
All right, Chris, thank you so much for coming on. But before we get off, we got to talk about the confection. Tell us about the horror short. Where can people find it? As I said, I love it. It has two of my favorite people in it, Alex Patek and Simone Norman. Alex, who I actually cast as we did a horror stream about Junji Ito, and we had a live, real life Tomie come on the show, and I cast Alex as one of Tomie's many adoring stalkers.
That's so good. I got to see that. I love them both. Alex will never get me to not laugh. Very, very funny guy. Very great guy. Yeah. So the confection, the pitch is what if your friend died in the stupidest way possible? It's kind of a comedy that ends up becoming a horror, and you'll never look at cake at the same way. And yeah, so I unlocked it for October. It's not like super public, but I'm also very giving. If you email me at christopherjasonbell@gmail.com, I'll give it to you. I don't know if you can put it in your show notes, just the link. I
And
think
it'll
that's
be in
fine
the show
too.
notes. We'll get it in there.
Okay, cool.
Jace, put it in the show notes.
Yeah, so and that's my first horror. I got another horror, which Fatak also has a little cameo in that I'm in post production on now, and I hope to be moving forward with more, and that'll be cool. So I do hope y'all check out Confection, and if you like it, please give us some nice notes, tell your friends, put on Letterbox that you really loved it. If you didn't like it, I'm sorry, you don't have to bother doing all that stuff.
All right. Thank you so much for coming on, folks. Thank you for listening. Struggle Session, patreon.com/struggle session to get every episode ad free along with tons of bonus episodes. Thanks for the great feedback on on our episodes with Dr. Jonathan Howard. We want them infected and Kyla. You fetishize. Love y'all. Have a great spooky season. Peace.